Hello, everyone. My name is Joshua Gilliland, one of the founding attorneys of the Legal Geeks. With me is retired Judge Matt Sciarrino from New York, now happily in Florida, and we're going to talk about Daredevil Born Again episodes 1 and 2. Your Honor, how are you today?
I am great. I got to play some bonus pickleball today, so it's been a fun day.
Yeah, we have very different lives now. But you are.
Yes, I'm enjoying the fact that I have to like physically think for a few minutes every day to think what day it actually is.
You lucky man. Yeah, that's a long ways off for me, but congratulations. Well
Thank
earned.
you.
You worked very hard to get there. Congratulations. So let's Daredevil, Born Again. There's a lot of New York law at play at this, and I'm a California attorney. And while nothing that we're going to talk about is actual legal advice, because we're talking about a fictional TV show with fictional characters, lawyers don't wear fatigues and go out fighting crime for community service. We just don't do that. But here we are to talk about Born Again. Now, I think as a point of order, Daredevil season 3 was effectively the Born Again story arc. So they're them calling this Born again, it's a little weird. But here we go. Your Honor, general impressions of the series.
I'm very happy that it's back. I very much like the Netflix series. While season one was the best, I think, of the three seasons. It took a little bit of a downturn in season two. It came back up in season three, in my opinion. It was nice to see the characters again. It was nice to see Karen Page again, and I'm so happy that it's the same cast. They were so good in the Netflix series, and it's really nice to see them really all back.
They had amazing esprit de corps, and the characters, well, the characters have the esprit de corps. The actors have an amazing chemistry that just binds them all together. And part of that chemistry is they have a law firm that's named after the two lawyers and a non-lawyer. And I'll just go out and say that would not fly. You can't.
Is she still a non-lawyer? Because I almost got the opinion that she's done law school by this point. And she, whether it was at night or, they don't really address it, but I almost got the feeling that she's now a lawyer, but I don't know. They really don't address that. Yeah, clearly, if she's not a lawyer, her name can't be on the masthead. In New York prohibits the only time that you can have someone that is on the masthead that is no longer with us is if if they're a deceased partner that was a partner on the masthead before he or she died. Other than that, you can't have accountants or any other uh, person on the masthead.
Exactly. So, barring the fact that she took the bar in between the last 7 years, she can't be part of the name of the law firm. Like it just doesn't work that way. I believe in all 50 states that would not fly. So, but I haven't researched all 50 states. That's just a gut feeling that that just doesn't work because it implies the unauthorized practice of law. And that's a no-no. We don't want people who are not lawyers putting themselves out as attorneys. So so if it's still the end of from season 3, it's a no-no. If she got her JD and took the bar, cool. But let's see if they drop that at some point. Moving on. This is an amazing intro with murder at the bar. And we have Bullseye come back, and there's a killing spree. There's at least 8 people killed. And Your Honor, what degree of murder would this be?
It's going to be basically second degree and or first degree, depending if they can get it as to a terrorist act because of the sheer amount of murders that took place. But in as much as first degree had capital punishment, which is declared unconstitutional by New York. For the most part, second-degree murder is your top charge in New York State. And there would be multiple counts because so many people were killed, and because of that, there would be other charges that would go along with the murder in the second degree.
Yeah, it's brutal. Foggy might have been an intentional hit. So if there's a murder, could that be murder one under New York?
Murder One in New York, for the most part, was an enhancement dealing with the killing of a law enforcement
Yeah.
officer. And it had the capital punishment element to it. So when one fell, the other kind of fell by the wayside as well. There's other charges that because of the mass murder aspect of it that they could bring, he clearly would be facing the maximums in New York which would be a lifetime sentence without parole, which is the highest sentence that can be that a defendant can be sentenced to.
California law is different, so it's interesting to hear that comparison because there's intent here, I believe, for at least Foggy. The others, well, it then varies because, again, if he's not intentionally going out for specific individuals, but it's just a mass casualty event, that's where lawyers would start trying splitting hairs. However, because of this fight and because Foggy is killed, and let's just put this out there, there's spoilers with this. So please, if you're just realizing that we're going to detail now, spoilers ahead.
Yes, Foggy is no longer a member of the firm of Murdoch, Page, and Nelson.
No, no, and again, the actor is just so likable with the way that the fact his screen time is so minimal in episode one, and his death is so uh, personal and hurtful with Karen Page over him, trying to keep him from bleeding out. Just very well done for an impactful opening. But you have Matt Murdock on the rooftop with the killer, and they're in full-blown mutual conflict at this point with beating the crap out of each other. And when Foggy dies, there's the yelling of like, why? And Murdoch pushes Bullseye off the roof. Is that how would you categorize that?
With the height of the roof, it was clear that I think his intent was to end Bullseye's life. I was really sorry to see Foggy go too. He certainly was one of my favorite characters. He was one of the most likable lawyers that has ever been on the small screen, and he was a good example of a lawyer that really wanted to always kind of do the right thing. So it's sad when one of those rare characters of a lawyer that is someone likable is gotten rid of. But clearly, Matt was. There's no doubt in my mind, and clearly his lawyer, if he was ever to be charged with this type of case, would argue that he didn't intend to kill him, that it was in the heat of the moment, that they were both fighting, that he was justified in defending himself, that he slipped and fell off the roof. But it's clear from later things and his discussions with Kingpin later that he intended to kill Bullseye.
I think they could knock it down to manslaughter because of the, passion of the moment and
Absolutely, absolutely.
his friend just died. I think there would also be a real risk of jury nullification with a jury going, we're okay with this.
Yeah, I don't even
We
see a grand jury indicting him for it with as egregious as Bullseye's action were. I would see even a grand jury saying no true bill and not indicting him for any serious charges there.
which is not how the system's supposed to work, but I could see a DA just going, no, we're not. We're just not. And that's not how the law should be administered, but uh, that's how it could get play out. So let's get to the victim statement for the sentencing, which thought was fascinating and well done. And again, they're not my area of practice. I'm an e-discovery guy. I do civil litigation. Like this is not my world. The number of criminal appearances I had as a young attorney is maybe three. So again, just not my wheelhouse. But Your Honor, you did this for many years as a judge.
I
So
did, and I've had many sentences, and as part of a sentence in New York, it's very, very well defined in our criminal procedure law as to the steps involved. The prosecutor gives a statement if a victim is going to give a statement. There were various victim rights acts that were passed during the governorship of Governor Pataki in New York, and the victims have a right to give a statement as well. And if the victim is going to give a statement, they do have to give notice that they do intend to make a statement. And then after the victim statement, the defense lawyer has the uh, has the right to make a statement, and then the defendant under our law also has the right to make a statement, and in fact has to be asked, "Do you wish to make a statement?" And they have to affirmatively say yes or no, and then make their statement. But they have an absolute right to make a statement. There's no requirements with regards to how long any one statement has to be or how short any one statement has to be. You certainly can, as a judge, I would be allowed to run my courtroom, and if the statement got out of if it was no longer relevant to the proceedings or to the actions, you could tell the defendant to either address the case or I'm going to be ending your statement. And in some situations that did happen. Yeah, with victims too, you sometimes have to kind of calm down. And there were some incredibly passionate statements that I presided over from victims over the years that yeah I can still recall some of those statements. They're horrific, and after all of those statements are made is when it is then up to the judge to pronounce his or her sentences of the defendant. But the judge has to listen to all of those statements beforehand, and then of course there's certain minimums and maximums that the law puts forth that the judge has to take into account when he or she is sentencing. But as long as it's a legal sentence, it is done right after all of those statements generally. And the judge sometimes makes a statement as well as part of the sentencing, as the judge did in this case. I think he made a very appropriate statement, and he sentenced consecutively to life sentences without parole, which basically means that they would be served one after the other after the other. Some of those might be on appeal, made to run concurrently, which means at the same time, because generally, if it's a separate act, it's supposed to be consecutive. If it's not a separate act, um, so you can make the argument that this was all part of one act. I think for each of the people killed, because there was some time in between, that it was purely appropriate to do it consecutively as separate acts. So I think that also when it's egregious like this, it's less chance that an appellate court's going to overturn it.
what did you think about the procedural depiction of Murdoch's testimony on having the defendant give a response and then the judge's decision? How did that play out in your mind for this looked good for a comic book TV show?
I thought it was incredibly accurate, actually. Clearly, one of the showrunners that's dealing, or the legal advisors, kind of at least looked up the procedures in the CPL and had them all follow the procedures because it was very, very accurate to what I would see on any given day in a New York court.
Impressive. Yeah, it's nice to hear the courtroom depiction goes like, yeah, that looked good.
Yeah, yeah. I was, because you're looking for that as a lawyer. You're kind of looking for where they go off script, and they were very much in line with the criminal procedure laws of New York and during that sentencing.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear that because yeah, not something I've ever participated in. So seeing that and hearing that is a good thing. Uh, so cool, very cool. Uh, let's take a look at the other big legal issue is there's a recall in New York City for the mayor. Now, as being a part of a Western state, part from the progressive era politics, we have recall procedures in California. We've had two attempts at recalling a governor. One was successful, one was crushed pretty effectively before it really went far. And uh, when I saw this was part of the story element for the series, I did a little double take because I wasn't expecting a recall story from New York. And can you walk us through how that could actually happen, or if this is accurate, or what the situation is?
Yeah,
So,
New York does not have a recall procedure for either the governor or the mayor, and I don't believe that there's any kind of recall provision for any elected official in the state of New York. The Interestingly, after Donald Trump pardoned the current mayor of New York, there was a bit of a call to have the governor remove the mayor, and that is a procedure in New York, and it's historically has been threatened twice, and on both times when it was very clear that the mayor was going to be removed, they did resign. One of these is the famous Jimmy Walker. There's a movie about it. In 1932 was when it happened, and one was William O'Dwyer in 1950, and there was some talk of Eric Adams that the governor might remove the mayor from office because the mayor was accused of basically taking some bribes from Turkish, the country of Turkey, officials, and Donald Trump pardoned him for that action, so it never went to trial. He clearly has said that he is not guilty of any of these crimes, and he's never been proven guilty of any of these crimes, but there was a bit of a call to remove him. The procedure for removal is very weird. It's basically the governor has to give her intention, in this case her, because the governor of New York is currently a female, would give her intention that she does intend to remove him. He would be suspended for a period of 30 days. During that suspension period, he is allowed to present a defense to the governor. It does not in any way put forth what this procedure would look like. Does he go to her office and beg for mercy? Is it done in public? No one knows what this procedure is, but he has the right to present his defense to the governor in whatever form that might be. And then at the end of that suspension, the governor can remove the mayor. There would not then be an election. So again, that was different from what they did in the show because in the show they had a recall followed by an election where the kingpin is elected to be mayor. Another spoiler there. Um, the public advocate, which is the third elected post in New York City governments. The first one is the mayor, the second one is the controller, the third one is the public advocate. The public advocate would become the acting mayor, and would, I believe, finish out the term, or there would be then a special election done at the next November. And New York has ranked voting, so that was adopted a couple of elections ago. So then it would be an election for the mayor thereafter.
So, by way of comparison for California with the gubernatorial recalls that we have, the election, it's two elections at once. So, part one on the ballot is should there be a recall, yes or no? And then the next part is who do you want to be governor?
The Terminator.
Yeah,
I want the Terminator.
and that's how. And so when Schwarzenegger was elected as governor to knock out Gray Davis, there were people who voted yes to recall, and then they voted for the candidate of their choice, whether it was Gray Davis or the lieutenant governor or Schwarzenegger. There were a bunch of people on the ballot. It turned into craziness, and that's how Schwarzenegger won. And then goes on to win in the next general election as well. There was like a brief attempt to like recall him, and that went nowhere because Californians were a little sick of it. Newsom had a recall effort, the current governor, and the opposition was able to get it on the ballot for the recall. And the political strategy for that recall election was for all the Newsom supporters to vote no on the recall. And they said, leave it blank for uh, like an alternate candidate. And granted, I did not leave part two blank. Uh, but I voted no just because I'm not a fan of the zaniness that can happen from recalls. I don't know if it will happen again in the history of California. Like those are the two that we had, unless there's some sneaky one. But I thought Gray Davis was the first governor to get recalled in California. So what they depict in the show is different than what I've experienced as a California voter because this was preordained that there's a recall. So like they met that hoop already, and it makes it sound like it was just a very different procedure at play for a recall to take place. So, which brings us to, I mean, there some of the other many issues is we're introduced to another vigilante whose name is White Tiger. This is a Marvel character I actually know very little about. Uh, but again, another street level vigilante. And they rank him up there with, there's Spider-Man, you have Punisher. So, like, those are Power Man, Iron Fist, Jessica Jones would be those street level type heroes that people interact with more so than, say, a Captain America. Uh, uh, who is more the Avengers level threat. So we see a subway scene where we have two individuals. It looks like they're beating up a third individual. The Good Samaritan comes in, he's on the phone, ends the phone call, and intercedes. And in that fight, one of the individuals who was the assailant gets killed by a subway train. Turns out those are police officers. Multiple issues here. First off, did Hector have a duty to rescue the victim? And I'll just say there's no general duty to rescue. So the answer to that is no. But we do have the third party defense of others. And Your Honor, could you walk us through how that works in New York and whether or not this would apply to this character?
The the White Tiger at that point was not acting in his White Tiger identity. He was basically looked like going home. You know, it was in civilian clothes, and he stumbles upon two people clearly beating a third person up to the point of it looked like they might beat him to death. Um, he had absolute no legal obligation, uh, possibly a moral obligation, um, to rescue this other person, maybe a moral obligation to call the police. The two police officers that were beating this person to death did not have any markings that they were police officers. They did not at any point say stop police or give any indication that they were police officers. And at no point when the white tiger got involved did they say stop, we're police officers. So he was in my mind somewhat justified to use physical force to stop the potential killing of this third party. He also clearly did not intend for that other police officer to get hit by the train. He was just pushed and he fell and he was hit by the train because the train was coming at that particular time. So he would have a very good, and I'm sure as we'll see in the trial, justification defense, um, because he is subsequently arrested and charged with the murder of a police officer. That would be murder in the first degree, and the his defense would be, A, I didn't know that they were police officers. I just thought that they were trying to beat up this person, and I was trying to protect and save this other person's life. And that is one of the, he would have been entitled to a justification charge, and the prosecutor would have to prove that he was not justified beyond a reasonable doubt.
Excellent. And great scene. I mean, fights well choreographed.
Very, very well done scene.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. And which is again one of the strongest parts of the show is the physical stunts that they do. Like from behind the scenes footage from season one, like they do a lot of work. And that attention to detail continues, and that's a great thing to see. So I started thinking about the motion and limine scene. So just backing up on how we get to that scene, Matt has a retired police officer, last name of Cherry, who plays Private Eye and does investigations, much like, say, a Jessica Jones would be doing. And Cherry goes out and finds out some information. And during a interviewing the wife, where the other partner at the law firm is talking to the wife, Cherry goes into the bedroom and basically conducts a search of the client's house and finds a box under the bed that has the white tiger costume and the magical amulet that gives additional powers of some kind. So, first off, just as if you're a superhero costume vigilante, I would hope they would take better care to not have the costume just that easy to find. Like there's no bat cave, like there's no false wall. It's a box under the bed. That doesn't seem to be, again, if you're going to play crime fighter, that doesn't seem to be a good plan because you literally can just trip over it. It also raises the issue of, had the police bothered to search the guy's house yet? And this makes me think no, because that wasn't taken into any custody. Uh, so again, just that just seems weird, problematic. But after that, we then jump to uh, this motion, first a client meeting where Murdoch confronts his client about this and raises the issue of, should the client have told Murdoch, by the way, I'm also a vigilante. There are issues with asking a client, hey, do you commit other crimes? Um, that could get bad. But we then jump to a court in chambers courtroom scene where a motion in limine was brought to suppress this evidence because the prejudicial effect outweighs its probative value. Your Honor, I want to get your thoughts on this, but one of the big issues that I had with it is if the state didn't know about it yet, did Matt commit any ethical violations by disclosing it in a motion in limine that his client is also a vigilante, which is a crime, in order to suppress it? So again, I think it's problematic, but what was your reaction to this?
Yeah, they clearly, started the scene somewhat in the middle. So we don't know if the state had already become aware of his identity. Somehow I doubt it for the same reasons that you just stated. That does not appear that there was a search of the apartment, because clearly if there was a search of the apartment, they might have found this emblem. Um, or if there was a search, they might not have known that what that yeah, I find that hard to believe, but that they didn't know what that costume or emblem meant and just left it there. Um, so it's unless there was, a precursory search of the apartment thereafter, and that's how they know that he is the white tiger. But I don't think any of that happened. So I think um, Matt figures that they would find out soon enough, so possibly then made the motion in limine, which I also find to be a bit weird, uh, in that I think he would have the motion prepared and ready to file, but not actually do it, because he is kind of disclosing a privileged conversation that he had with his client, um, by bringing those facts, unless he got the client's permission, to make that motion. And none of that is before us. So I think that it was just some poor writing, in that they didn't really consider all of those legal issues, and they had him make the motion. But yeah, there were some ethical problems with regards to Sam, because he clearly is disclosing a something that he learned in his conversations with his client, and those conversations are privileged, and it's his client's privilege. It's not his privilege, so he would not have the right to disclose that.
It's Yeah, it was just this ethical minefield that is created by this motion in limine to suppress that evidence. And now, if it's come out again, if it's come out in the press, there are new issues on top of that, and that we now have the Spider-Man No Way Home scenario. But I don't think that's happened yet. I don't think this is public information. So the fact that a motion in limine is brought, it seems ethically problematic. Uh, I mean, like, it's theoretical that it could have been on an exhibit list, and that's why Murdoch brought the um, motion in limine. But this entire, again, we come in the middle of it, and it's just weird.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean, it was a secret identity,
yeah,
because if it wasn't a secret identity, and if it was common knowledge that this person was the white tiger, it would have been all over the press. The DA would be, kind of involved in the issue of it being the white tiger. So it clearly is a secret identity. And as such, it would be clearly privileged. So yeah, I don't. I think either Matt made a ethical blunder, or it was just not something that the writers took into consideration.
I also wonder if having a client who's a vigilante and the prosecution's trying to bring that out, if it raises the flag of bad character evidence. Now, at least in California and in federal courts, you're not supposed to bring evidence of bad character because it's prohibited. On the flip side, if the opposing party brings out evidence of good character, then the bad character evidence can be, used to rebut that. But you generally don't want to have evidence that could show that there was conduct that was, well, that's just how he is. He fights, he beats people up. Therefore, he's guilty of beating these people up. Like that's why. bad character evidence is not allowed to come in.
Which is what his in limine motion was it was to prohibit the prosecution from using evidence of prior bad acts. And New York is unlike most states, it has no code of evidence. They have created in recent vintage what is New York's guide to evidence, which is created by the Court of Appeals and other people that sit on this guide board, and it's a statement of what the evidence is based on the case law, and it's almost taken the position of a code to some extent. But the law in New York dealing with prior bad acts is from a case. It's called the People versus Molyneux. So it's called the Molyneux exception to prior bad acts coming in, and there are certain things which you can make an argument for allowing these prior bad acts into evidence if they show certain things, motive, if they show opportunity, intent, preparation for some common scheme or plan, knowledge, the identity, if these prior bad acts are, and here's where I think they might have been allowed in to show the identity of him as the white tiger, and that this was part of his vigilantism, and to show his identity as this prior as the white tiger. Maybe arguably a prosecutor would argue that that's why we have to allow in these prior bad acts if they are even bad acts. You know, is acting as a vigilante a bad act? Arguably, because you don't have the right to do some of the things that you're doing. But you know, it was not a bad tactical decision to get a ruling on prohibiting. But you know, it goes back to, I think it was a little bit premature to make that motion. The way a Molyneux motion usually would come before me is the prosecutor would make the motion that we want to use these prior bad acts because of they go to show motive, they go to show intent, whatever it is. And then the defense would say that the probative value is so far outweighed by the prejudice it's going to show against my client, which is the exact words that Matt used, and those are the legal words that the judge would consider. And I was happy to see that the judge, I think, made the correct legal ruling in this case. I didn't think he was. Um, and and after that argument is made is when the court would rule. And then uh, if the defendant were to possibly present a defense which in some way makes those prior bad acts relevant again, it's possible that the court could allow the prosecutor in their rebuttal case to bring in those prior bad acts. And that's usually the way it would come before the jury.
Yeah, thank you for that explanation because there's a connection between prior bad acts and prejudicial effect versus probative value. And I would think you would actually make both arguments in order for a belt and suspenders. But again, it's a highly problematic scene. I do think the right result is reached by the judge, because this does look like the DA is just trying to, pile it on. And in this world, which is set a couple years in the future, so I think it's, since they make reference that Fisk was going to be the 112th mayor, also and they're on 110 right now. The effects of Captain America: Brave New World. I think that election was 2028. So maybe 2024 in MCU, but I think it's 2028 after Infinity War. And how would people view vigilantes in that world where, you had half the population disappear, turn into dust, and then come back? And the survivors lived for 5 years in that world from 2017 to 2022, I think is their timing of the blip. So people might be okay with vigilantes and superheroes because there's been alien invasions, more than one. Uh, they might have not have a problem with the Avengers at this point in time because of what happened. On the flip side, it depends what the vigilante's doing. Like if people are Team Punisher, that's not a good place to be from a civil society. Um, but if there's rampant crime and you have, again, vigilantes tipping the balance so people feel safe, they might be okay with it. And it might not be bad character in somebody's eyes. So bring that up. If the vigilante is viewed as popular, could backfire from a prosecutorial point of view.
And clearly, because they did do a lot of scenes with the man on the street as part of the campaign coverage, where you had a lot of people saying that the reason that they were voting for the Kingpin was because of the rampant crime, and that the only people doing anything about it was the vigilantes and the people in the suits, and that the cops were were unable to take care of this. So you could very well have a large jury pool that is not anti-vigilante. And I'm sure when they do jury selection, that would be part of the voir dire that Matt would engage in is even though there's he got this favorable ruling, he would know that it's still possible that somewhere down the line, uh, maybe the press or someone else is going to make the connection that this is the white tiger. So one of the things I want to find in my jury selection are jurors that are somewhat sympathetic towards the vigilantes, if in fact it comes out that the person that's being accused of these crimes is in fact a vigilante.
Yeah, it'd be like if one of the jurors said, like, yeah, a vigilante saved me. Okay, which vigilante saved you? The White Tiger. We thank you
You're
for your service.
excused.
It's like, bye. Uh, thanks. Uh, as opposed to, again, yeah, Spider-Man saved me. Cool. Okay. Thank you for your service. But like there could be a category where it's on the line, but I would think the prosecution would want no one who's been saved by a vigilante.
Or any superhero almost.
Yeah.
I would not want on my jury if I'm the prosecutor in this kind of case.
Which could be really hard because of the Battle of New York with Loki and the Avengers, because a lot of people would qualify for that, and a lot of that they survived it. To the battle in Infinity War that takes place in New York by Doctor Strange's house. So, I mean, and this is a world where there's been lots of activity in New York with heroes. So that's going to be the jury questionnaire might be the simple way to knock that out uh, before even getting to voir dire. But it's a fascinating discussion to think about how that trial could look.
Yeah, you almost have every citizen of New York in the Marvel universe experiencing some form of post-traumatic stress at this point, I would think.
Yeah, loud. Everyone's going to be afraid of loud noises because any flash of light in the sky would freak them out. Especially like the United States has been lucky that the number of actual battles that have taken place on our soil, it's limited to the Civil War, 9/11, and a couple weird incursions during World War II with the balloon attack, that set some trees on fire in Oregon. Like there's not a lot of.
Right. I think there was a Japanese sub that took a couple of shots on the West Coast, and there was a U-boat or two off of Long Island. But yes, clearly the United States has been very lucky that it has very large oceans
Mhm.
on both sides, and you know, but like with September 11th, you did have a hyper tense population for a very long time because we had military planes flying over for weeks, and we didn't have the usual commercial planes because they were all grounded at that point. So the military planes, when they went over you, yeah, it was a very foreign experience for a lot of New Yorkers, and so clearly, if you up that by the scale of the MC Universe happenings in New York, you would have a populace that is pretty high strung.
Yeah, because you think about the events of the other Daredevil series or the Defenders. It's like, so there's a ninja cult running around. Like people are going to notice that stuff, and it's going to be in collective memory. Uh, whether it's 20 years in the past or 10 or 5 or last week, like people are going to be on their toes about those type of events. So again, jury selection could get weird. But if you're at the point where no one in New York can sit on the jury because everyone's been saved, that again, it can tip the other direction. They highlight in the Hawkeye series that after the initial Battle of New York, there were a lot of people who were upset at the Avengers, blame the people who saved you. But by the time of the Hawkeye series, there's the Rogers musical, people have swung the other way. So again, if there's more than one musical on Broadway about superheroes, you might have a problem in finding a jury pool that can meet everyone's needs. So, so with that, we get, the victim of the subway attack is hard to find. And the police officers track him down, and Matt figures out where the guy is as well through a series of events. Matt gets to him first, and Matt, as Matt Murdock, gets the guy out of the apartment. Cherry picks is going to pick him up, and Matt is waiting for the two, I'm going to say, corrupt police officers.
Yeah, I think that if you had any doubt as to whether or not the police officers were justified in beating this person on the subway station when the white tiger got involved, that doubt is clearly taken away from you with regards to this scene because they were clearly going to finish the job and get rid of this person who they failed to get rid of at the subway station, and clearly it was a hit job, and they clearly are dirty cops.
Which is frustrating for police officers who watch this and go like, guys, no, no, we don't have Punisher tattoos. No. Uh Seeing now, granted, Matt can't see. I don't know if he can sense that there's a Punisher tattoo on the corrupt officer's wrist, but that was troubling. It also highlights how Marvel Comics did not like seeing police officers start putting Punisher logos on, tops of police cars. They didn't like that, and they wrote it into stories about the Punisher not liking it.
And I will not comment on the amount of police officers that I know that have Punisher decals on their vehicles.
I'm going to just say not okay. Uh, Not okay. That said, my mom was a paramedic, grew up with lots of police officers as family friends, and along with firefighters. So, not okay. That said, so we have this fight that takes place, and they rough up Murdoch, and then they're going to execute him on his knees, gun to his head. And he says, please don't do this. And there's debate if he's talking to the corrupt police officers or to himself, because we end with an incredible fight scene where he beats the snot out of those two. He gets beat up too, so there's his blood at the scene. Your Honor, what's your thoughts on this being self-defense?
First off, I don't think there's a character in the Marvel universe that gets beat up as badly or as much as Matt Murdock. He really really gets beat up a lot, and not just like a little bit, but I'm always amazed that he can, come back after all of these beatings. Um, he clearly, again, would have a justification defense. They were clearly trying to kill him, so he would put forth a defense that he was justified in doing what he did. And again, if he's ever tried, and if the series goes along with some of the comic books, I think he does get tried under the Kingpin administration. Um, there's also, spoiler alert, that there's a series where he becomes the DA under the Kingpin administration. So it's curious to see which way they're going to go, because they're clearly getting their source materials from a couple of really, really good comic series of the Daredevil. But again, the prosecutor would have to prove that he was not justified to take the actions that he did beyond a reasonable doubt before they would be allowed to consider whether or not he was guilty of the crimes that he's alleged to have done.
Yeah, thank you. It's very well done. I mean, it's a very well done fight. I saw one person on, I think on TikTok go, "Did Murdoch kill those guys?" I don't think so, because that's very not Matt Murdock.
Yeah, which is why, when he tosses Bullseye or off the roof, basically, it was very, very un Matt Murdock, because at his core, Matt Murdock is a struggling Catholic. And all the Daredevil imagery, and it's a very, you know religious undertones to Daredevil. He very much struggles with the actions that he takes. There's always a priest involved in all the series, where he either goes for confession or for support. He really is a good moral Catholic, who really kind of understands, punishment and virtue, and it's got a lot of religious undertones to it, and it's not an overly religious show, but you clearly sense, that struggling Irish Catholic, kind of being in Matt Murdock.
Yeah, it's you have him going and hanging out by a church, hearing the singing that's taking place inside. And, the his priest that he confided in that knew he was Daredevil was killed. So there's probably guilt over that which is why he's not attending a service. Again, I'm guessing at that, but we don't see him go in where, he would go talk to his priest in, the earlier series, with this character. So again, a lot to unpack, but again, it is fascinating. And I've briefly discussed this with my pastor, who enjoys it immensely as well, as a Lutheran, which is not Catholicism, but we have some very similar scriptures and doctrine that we follow. So, but we don't have
Listen, yeah, right. Luther's problem was that the Catholic Church got away from itself, through so many various things that it was doing. With the most being the selling of dispensations for that guilt. So the Catholic Church was capitalizing on Catholic guilt by saying, if you pay us this amount of money, we can, cut your time in purgatory. And Martin Luther clearly didn't think, because he was a very devout Catholic himself, that he didn't think that the Catholic Church was doing the right thing by doing all these things. But Catholic guilt is definitely a theme in Daredevil.
absolutely, and it's fascinating having questions of faith and an action adventure superhero story.
Yeah, yeah, and great questions of lore, and I expect many more as this series continues.
Part of the reason why I really enjoy it, because I enjoy both immensely, and being able to see them depicted with thoughtfulness is a rewarding watching experience. So with that, we will continue our analysis of Daredevil Born Again. For those who are attending WonderCon, I can say that we will be there with a panel. I will not say any more until we can release the schedule, which Comic-Con International will do by March 14th. So stay tuned for more about what we will be presenting at WonderCon in Anaheim, California. So, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Wherever you are, stay safe, stay healthy, and stay geeky. Take care.